Hi everybody, this is Carol Sherwood. Welcome to Stephen Avery, The Devil is in the Details. And I want to share something with you today because I've had a few questions on X and on the YouTube channel. People asking me or questioning how to tie all this together. And I get that. I get that it is a curious issue to try to figure out when you have multiple thoughts and multiple pieces of information and you're trying to tie it all together to make sense to those who might not get it. Okay, because your mind's not in my mind and my mind's not in your mind, so we may be going in two completely different directions. Well, let me set you straight on a couple of things. A while back, and I'm going to hold this up, I created a document. My co-researcher and I got together on it, and it's called the Red Flag document. And what it is at the center of our research is the RAV4 in this case. And in this document, we have detailed, and really we just did some brief summaries of several of the things that were the high points or the big pieces of information that we put together so you could see how our belief is everything leads back to the RAV4. That is a big, what's the word I'm looking for? That is a big push and a big reason why we believe that the RAV4 is a decoy in this case. You know, when you watch Making a Murderer, because it's the only place we have footage. Now, Convicting a Murderer has some too. But in Making a Murderer, and you see the case playing out in the courtroom, and you see Ken Kratz, the prosecutor, talking about the case, one of the things that you see is there is a focus on the vehicle because it was found on Avery property and because the blood and DNA of both Teresa and Stephen are found in the vehicle. Some of Stephen's DNA is found on the outside of the vehicle. So for most people, or a lot of people, that is a slam dunk guilty verdict right there. And that's frankly what convicted him. But when you start looking at this case and you start questioning things that seem odd, and you dig deeper, there are some things that may turn out to be nothing, and they may not, doesn't matter if you dig deeper, they may turn into nothing. But there are some things that did turn into some things that we found, and they definitely have made a difference in our thought process. So let's go over this just in kind of I'm going to give you kind of the high altitude view that just goes over a few details, but I think you'll find it interesting. So we're going to start with this document called the Red Flag. At the very top of it, the first red flag is the dot record, okay? So in the dot record, what we find is a record presented at trial to show support for or proof of the VIN number and the plate number that go with the vehicle found on Avery property, which belonged to Teresa Halbach. Okay, that's how it's presented. When we dug a little deeper, what we found was it appears that Teresa's dot record is not an authentic dot record coming from the DMV. That may not make a lot of sense to anyone, but you can go to my YouTube channel, Stephen Avery, The Devil is in the Details, and you can listen to the video that talks about this in depth. So that dot record seems a little off in that it doesn't seem valid, it doesn't seem authentic, and the fact that there's additional information that goes with it about Teresa's vehicle history being completely wiped off the DMV database, and that's a big deal. Okay, so her vehicle history of any other vehicle, the plates, the historical reference to the plates, SWH 582, completely gone. And we're not talking about records retention. Go watch the video and you'll find out. But that is one piece of the puzzle that does directly point to the vehicle, okay? The next one on the list, if we go in clockwise, the next one on the list is the VIN. Okay, with the VIN and finding out there's no clear pictures of the VIN on the car, which I think is strange because it's the largest piece of evidence in the case, and to not show a wham bam clear picture of that VIN, no matter what, saying this is Teresa Halbach's car, hands down, no about a doubt it, literally. But there's no clear pictures. And then when you get to the chassis wall and you see that zoomed in picture that I showed you that was taken by the Wisconsin State Patrol, they weren't trying to zoom in and show the chassis wall. They were taking pictures of the vehicle. That just happens to be one of the photos with a good clear picture of that chassis wall. And when you zoom in on it, you can see that there is not a full chassis wall number showing. There's some in the shadow, but what does show are the 3044. And as you zoom in and you make that picture clearer, and as I put it under a couple of other programs that showed lighting differences, you can tell that the 3044 ending on that chassis wall appear to have been etched on there. They appear, because they're rough looking, they don't look like the rest of the letters. They do not line up at the bottom. And when you go read about Toyota's regulations on their VINs and their patented technology, you'll see that there are some apparent discrepancies there. So it's just one more thing that draws our attention back to the car. All right, let's go to number 3. Number 3 on here is SWH 582. That is Teresa Halbach's license plate presented in this case. There's some interesting facts about it. I mentioned to you earlier that the DMV's history on SWH 582 is non-existent. As a matter of fact, since February of 2023, a year ago, when my co-researcher got her FOIA'd copy of the vehicle history, not the driving record, but the vehicle history, it clearly states on there is no record of or reference to SWH 582 in their entire system any longer. The VIN's there, and it shows it's associated with Teresa Halbach. But that information we confirmed in August of 22 that what was on the dot record was still in their system, and then by February 23, it was gone. And I will tell you, both of us were doing some heavy-duty research at the time on this license plate and trying to get copies of Teresa's driving record, which were never provided to us, not the driving record. All right. The next one is an NCIC report. If you know what the NCIC report is, it's an FBI report for when the searches were made by different agencies when Teresa Halbach was reported missing. Okay. When you go back, and this has been FOIA'd, and it was a report that was received through FOIA, and then my co-researcher requested a FOIA copy. I requested a FOIA copy. We wanted to be sure it said the same thing it said from back when somebody else got it, and those copies were the same as what was on record, and they are the same. Okay. Now, what's interesting about it is, here's what looks strange. Calumet County, the very people who were putting out the information on Teresa missing and her car missing at the time, remember this all went down on 11/3 is when this was released, the attempt to locate Teresa and her car by approximately 7 o'clock in the evening on November 3rd. Calumet County has 6 searches before that ATL was released. They're the people inputting the information, so they know what is out there and what's not. So I think it just draws kind of a little bit of attention to why did they run it 6 times before finally, with no hits, mind you, until finally at about 6:44, 6:45, right in there, they run the search that shows the hit on the plates and the hit on Teresa Halbach as a missing person. And then boom, right close to 7 o'clock, it was about 10 till, they released the ATL that license plate and Teresa Halbach are now known across the waves as a missing person and missing car. The very last page of this NCIC report has a very interesting warning on it. This report stayed active until 11/17. Now, mind you, remember they found the car on the 5th, keys, bones, electronics, different things on the 8th. And then now on the 17th, they show on this NCIC report, the originating agency, Calumet County, closed this report. They're the ones who can close this report because their need for finding the person or finding the vehicle has been apparently satisfied to that point because they found bones and they found the car. The warning that pops up on November 17th on this NCIC report, it specifically says, warning, this record contains expired license plates. That is November 17, 2005. Teresa just renewed those license plates, SWH 582, in September of 05. So do the math. October, November. Why would a warning pop up regarding expired? I was like, what's that word? Expired license plates in this record when the only record at the DMV is SWH 582 and it was renewed in September. Another red flag going back to the car. All right. The next one, there is the IBR UCR report. This is a portion of a report that was posted on Reddit a while back. It's been a few years back. But the odd thing that it says on there is it says that the RAV4 in this case was seized on 11/3. Now, people have said this means it's a summary of all of the things that happened around this car, and that is just a kind of like a summary front comment for all the details behind it. Okay? Maybe that's true. That could be true. But the issue is that is more concerning than just that saying 11/3 it was seized, is that the coding in the IBR UCR system, the coding that was put on that has been changed since 2016 when that started being questioned after Making a Murderer came out. So, because now it appears on there as though it is not an IBR UCR reporting incident, it's more of a description, kind of a misnomer. But why would you need to change it? Just leave it. The trial's over. We're way on down the road. Just let it go. Let it be talked about. Who cares? Red flag. Another thing pointing back to the car. The next one is, I'm going to make this one a lighthearted one. KSL ad. There is a auto advertising for sale guide that runs up in the Utah, Wyoming, Idaho area up there, and it's called KSL.cars. It's part of cars.com, but they don't have they don't have, what do you call it? Not eBay, Craigslist. Okay. They don't have Craigslist. Their version of Craigslist to advertise automobiles and things for sale are KSL. So it's ksl.cars.com. You can't find it there now because now it's disappeared. Interesting that it has disappeared, but my co-researcher was doing some looking. She's not even sure how she got back to it, but we printed it out. And what happens is you see in May of 21, March through May of 21, an ad is in this ksl.cars, and it just so happens to be an ad for a RAV4 with the VIN number of Teresa's RAV, and it says it has 275,000 miles on it. Now, this could just be some phony, bogus, whatever, joke. It could be. But once again, it was something that we found that referenced the car, and that one, we're going to call that just a side bucket. We're not really going to take that one too seriously because it could very well just be some phony thing. But we did call and find out that the ad ran from whoever, it said private seller, that it did run from March through May. So that's really all we know about that. So now I want to go to the next one, which is Carfax versus AutoCheck. And I'm going to give you the really highlight view here. Carfax is a current picture of whatever information that they have access to at the time that they update their records. So if you said you owned a Cadillac and you renewed the plates 14 times over 10 years, and now your record is updated at the DMV where it just shows your new truck and you've registered it 3 times and all that stuff's purged off, then all Carfax is going to get is the current picture of what you have now. It doesn't go cover that history. It only covers what's out there now. There's a difference. AutoCheck, and this is important and you need to know it, AutoCheck is a history. The only way, and we've called and confirmed and found out the difference in the two sources because they're both legit sources used by car selling entities, whether it's dealerships or, there's a lot of advertisements for them on used cars and new cars. The main difference is AutoCheck has the history. They will not purge the history off their system, even if the DMV purges it off of their system, unless, or a car dealer, unless they are requested through a formal procedure of requesting a change, that their records be modified or updated or altered or whatever to reflect something different than what they've historically shown. And even then, it has to go through their audit department and be proven. You have to include reasons why you are changing it. They want that history to be as authentic as possible, and they want to make sure there's no scamming going on out there. So, Carfax and AutoCheck are the two top legit services for these vehicle histories. The difference as it relates to Teresa Halbach's car is Carfax only shows that picture of what we see on the dot record from the DMV. They show just the initial registration of the car and the one plate renewal. But AutoCheck has a lot more, including 2 re-registration events between the date Teresa registered the car and renewed SWH on 9/15 of 05. Why would those in the middle be gone? They're on AutoCheck. They're registration events. Why would they be gone? Part of the question that's been asked to me, and they think I'm nutty, because I think SWH 582 is not hers. But part of the reason I say that is because if her plates were SWH 582, really, why would you need to wipe out the history? Why wouldn't those be on the DMV site? They're not. When we called and confirmed that SWH was still on their system back in August of 22, prior to, and we'd also called in 21, when we found out that information, that history wasn't there. History wasn't there, but AutoCheck shows it. That points back to the car via the plates. All right. The next one that I want to go over with you is something that is not huge to probably anybody except for me, but it is stuck in my craw, and I think it's important. Teresa's car build package came with several things that we can see on that vehicle that's on Avery Auto Salvage. Okay. I believe they found the same car in the same color. There's stuff missing on it that no one can explain. Even people who think he is guilty cannot explain why there's bolts missing. But there's one thing that's listed as an option on the sales guide that's not on Teresa's build sheet. And that is a visor that's on the roof in front of the sunroof, like a little wind visor, deflector. The reason I say that is because the one found on Avery Salvage has the little visor up there. Okay, that's got that visor on there. When you go back and you look at the photo, which is the next red flag document, when you look at the photo of Teresa standing by that RAV, there was a researcher years ago on the George Zipper blog spot that found that that photo had been altered and Teresa was made taller. And they didn't carry it any further. They were just puzzled. And they knew that she was made taller than the vehicle, and they couldn't figure out why. None of us could, and everybody just kind of let it go for a while. There was a demonstration made of a person who was exactly the same size as Teresa. They did a picture comparison of Teresa standing by the RAV. She only looks like she's about 18, 20 inches away from the door of the RAV, because you can tell by the stripe on the parking lot. She's standing right on that stripe, and the car's not very far away from that stripe. So there's the picture of Teresa by the RAV, and they've got a picture of another woman, same height as Teresa, it shows on her driver's license, standing by a RAV4 and showing that Teresa was 5'6". All right. That model of RAV4 from the bottom of that tire to the top of that roof was 5'5". So Teresa should be 1 inch. Her hair is the only thing that really should be pretty much over the top of that car, with the exception of about 1 inch, and then her hair. The top of that car shows Teresa is right to there. Teresa's a head taller in that photograph. And there's got to be a reason why. Could it be a reason that maybe the people that photoshopped the photo just had no clue on earth the height of the car versus a person, and maybe they just photoshopped her into it to create a picture? I have no idea. But I believe they've made her taller, and you can tell there's some other photo editing going on there. She's a little wider. Teresa was skinny, y'all. She was 5'6" and weighed 130 pounds. That's a twig. She doesn't look like a twig in that picture. She don't look fat. But when you see her in the picture by the RAV, she doesn't look skinny like a 130-pound, 5'6" out there. All right? What I believe is she was made to look taller, and they proportioned her, but made to look taller so that her head fell right across the spot on the top of that car where that visor would be. meaning her head is to hide the spot on her car that's in that picture that has no visor. There's really no other reason to make her taller. Maybe you think I'm nuts and that doesn't even make sense. I don't care. It doesn't have to make sense. But I did look up the build sheet. I did look up everything that were options on that car to see if there was anything that were outliers. And the only thing that we could find was that little wind visor. And remember this, because this is important. They didn't have this photo until trial time in 2007. It wasn't like they went and got the photo and said, oh, look, here's a picture of Teresa by the car. That photo didn't come into play until the trial. And the other thing that you need to know is interesting about it is there is a conversation between Judge Willis and Ken Kratz right at the beginning of this trial when Mike Halbach is on the stand and he's the first witness. And Judge Willis stops Ken Kratz and he says, Mr. Kratz, I realize the photo that we're looking at needs to be numbered. Are you still looking for the original? And Kratz says, yes, Judge, we are. Then he says, although we have the original, I'm going to use this for the next witness or two just to reference blah, 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 blah. Okay? That whole conversation is a conversation of Willis covering his hind end that if it's ever found out that there's no original, he's off the hook because he asked for it, because he said it needed to be filed. Well, I called the records department in Manitowoc, okay? And I asked, I said, listen, before you go hunting for stuff and I put in a FOIA request, for this and have people digging and digging and digging, I just want to know, would there be any way to be able to tell if something was added after the initial evidence was logged there at the trial and all these things are logged? Would there be something that would show that there was anything that was like, oops, this is logged a day or two later? And the lady said, you would have it. And I said, are you able to find out if there is? She told me right off the bat. And then I don't know what she looked at, if she looked at anything, but she said nothing was added. Okay. I didn't tell her I was looking for that original photo. I just said, would there be record of something being added after the fact when these things have already been entered? And she said there should be, but she said nothing was added. So think about that. There's another piece of information that goes back to that car. Something about this car. And the last one is the key fob. And we find out there's an inordinate amount of attention on the key fob, not in 2005 or 2007, but in 2017, when John Dietering does follow-up interviews with a bunch of Teresa's friends and a few of her associates. And what he's asking about is, does anybody remember Teresa having a key fob? Something that remotely unlocked her door. Not started, remote unlock. Nobody remembered it. And then he's calling Toyota and he's getting key cut codes. And you're like, why do you care about a key, anything about this key, 12 years after this case is over? They brought Dietering out of retirement on taxpayer dollar to do these follow-up interviews because I guess there was no one qualified to do them. But they bring him out of retirement and he's asking about the key and he's asking about the damage to the vehicle. All of that had been talked about in the trial. Not this piece of it. but at least it had been resolved enough in the trial to have been kind of like put on the list whether they belong, but all the DNA still put Stephen away. So why now? Why 12 years later is there such a focus and a concern on the key fob and the damage? But the key fob in this case, because that's one of the red flags that we have. And the damage. We found out Ryan lied about the damage. Couldn't remember who told him the story. It's like he just flat out lied. So that's the purpose of this, y'all. The red flag document is to show there, and this is just part of it. This is part of what we did that follows anything in everything that we've studied and found somehow links to this car in a very unusual way. Is it a decoy? We believe it is. We absolutely believe it is. There's a lot at stake to keep that from being known. If you've ever had any interaction, from what I've been told, with Ken Kratz on social media, when the RAV4 is brought up, and has been since way back in Reddit days, even sometimes on X, but Reddit's a big one, he absolutely becomes irate and defensive about the car. Something is up with that car. There's a lot more, but I wanted to go over the red flag document with you because that's a big deal. Y'all have a great day. Tune in and listen to more of my videos. Thanks.